Welcome to A1R Psychic Radio here on Moonstruck TV with Amanda Hall Psychic all the way from the Gold Coast. Well, this is a monumental sort of show for me. I've been with the network now since last Friday. It's been 8 beautiful, fantastic years. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank everybody at the network for their amazing professional abilities and their friendliness. And, you know, we've all become a great team there. You know, we're all good friends. We all enjoy doing what we do here at the network. And it's really a testament to Dave and Connie that, you know, they pull the team together and keep everybody sort of excited and ready to sort of talk to their audience every week, because it is an amazing job and it is an amazing opportunity to connect with so many people around the world. And look, I know so many people sort of send me messages and inbox me and sort of ask questions and sort of talk about the astrology and or talk about tarot cards or whatever. But the most things that people sort of say to me is, I really get something out of each and every show that I watch. It doesn't matter which presenter I'm watching, there's always a little special snippet of something in there for me. And I think that's the important thing, that we're all different. We all see things differently. We all have a different opinion or a different interpretation. We might all still be looking at the same deck of cards or the same astrology report, but we all put our own personal interpretation into it or our own flair. And I think that's what makes us all unique and special. And that makes it a good variety for the viewers and the listeners around the world, because each person will take the precise message that is meant for them out of it. And sometimes there is no message for you, and that's okay too. So it's, you know, it's a learning curve for everybody. We never stop learning in this industry. I've been in this industry well over 40 years now, and I can still say that there's days there where I still learn something or think, gee, I wouldn't have put it that way, or I hadn't thought of it in that way. So it's an amazing opportunity for all of us to continue to grow and learn and enjoy each other's company along the way. And, you know, I'll just go take this opportunity to say, look, all the shows are there, from all the shows, from all the network, you know, from everybody around the network. Just go into YouTube and click on, you know, a past show, maybe one you haven't seen. For me personally, I have a page set up on my YouTube page where you can go in and find all my shows there, and you can go back and binge watch, you know, any show from the last 8 years. And look, I have regular people that have been with me since the 8 years, it happened 8 years ago, that go back and continually randomly pick a random show and watch that as well during the week. And they tell me that the information that even they get out of something that might have been 7 or 8 years old is quite often the message that they needed for that precise moment, for that situation that was going on in their life. So don't just look at what we share with you on the show weekly as being, well, that's it, it's done and dusted once the show's over. The message, the information can live on for eternity, because there's always something that we can take out of things. So for those of you that don't know me, that might be the first time that you're watching the network, my name's Amanda Hall. I've been in the psychic industry for over 40 years here in Australia. I was inducted into the Psychic Hall of Fame back in 2013, and I won Australian Psychic of the Year for about 7 or 8 years in a row. So I am reasonably qualified to talk about these subjects. It's been my life's work. It's been my passion. It's been something that I never decided I was going to go into as far as a profession. It just happened. I was drawn to it. I was pulled into it. I didn't have much choice. I had to go kicking and screaming, but I'm so pleased I did. I've been fortunate enough to work with some of the world's greatest psychics throughout my extensive career. I've travelled the country, I've lectured, I've written books, I've done many TV and radio appearances, I've written for many magazines, and I really feel I've found my home here on A1R Psychic Radio and Moonstruck TV, because it enables me to showcase what I want to showcase, what I think is important, what I think that people need to understand or know about at this precise moment in time. And that's the flexibility that this network gives me, that, you know, provided we do a couple of callers a week, and unfortunately today we won't be able to do that due to a technical hitch, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on, and in the astrology report. But it's always nice to connect with people, and I always feel that the right people get sent to the right presenter. You know, they get the right answers that they're personally needing. And sort of over the years, the show has evolved and changed and grown. And, you know, we've been through a pandemic and a few other things, and world events and fires and famine and rain events and cyclones and you name it, we've been through it all. But at the end of the day, what keeps me going is the people that sort of tune in, that watch the show, that leave their comments, that sort of send a little message and say, thank you very much, that really helped me, or maybe I need to look at my life in a different way. It's you that make the show so special. And it's nice to be able to sort of work with a talented bunch of people that are incredibly professional. And, I know quite often, go and watch some of the other shows from some of the other presenters when time permits, and everybody has something unique and special to bring to the table. And I think that's what makes this network so amazing. And they've been going now 16 years. So, it's a long time to be, in the marketplace and having something that is as successful as this has been. And it's because of you. So let's kick the show off with the Simply Tarot card of the week, as we do every week. And this week it's the moon. Now, look, the moon is one of those very ambiguous sort of cards. People sort of say to me, oh, look, I'm not necessarily an emotional person. The moon, yes, is about emotions, but let's go into the meaning on the bottom of the card. The card is deception or delays, emotions up or down, and maybe deceiving yourself or others. Now, emotions aren't always negative. We have this sort of, first impression is, we see an emotional card like the moon, we think, oh, no, I'm going to have a bad day. It doesn't necessarily mean that at all. It means your emotions can be on a terrific high. Maybe you're going to have the best day of your life. It's about understanding and working with your emotions. And we're all emotional, whether or not we want to admit it or not. We all do have emotions, like we all breathe. So, some of us wear our emotions or our heart on our sleeves, so to speak, and others of us are very good at hiding it or burying our emotions so that we look like as if we are emotionless. But nobody is emotionless. We all are affected by emotions. Now, it's interesting because, it can be a positive emotion, it can be a negative emotion, it can be a combination of all the others, of everything in between. 1 minute you're on the high and the next minute you're feeling down in the dumps. They're all parts of being human. There's no one day that is the same as the next day or the day previous or the days heading in future. Every day is unique and special because we're breathing. We're living life. Whether or not we feel we're achieving anything, we are making small steps towards where we need to be going. Now, we need to be careful that maybe we're deceiving ourselves or others. Now, look, there's been many times in my life where I've thought I was on the right path and sort of, I try and convince myself or talk myself into yes, that's right. And I become very determined, stubborn and pig-headed and outspoken. And if anybody questions my decisions or my path, I get quite hostile about it and say, no, I know best. This is my life. You mind your own business and we'll get on just fine. And, when you go away and you look at that and you think, hang on a minute, maybe there's some truth in that. Maybe I am deceiving myself. Maybe I am on the wrong path. Maybe I'm trying to force the square peg into the round hole. And that's what the secondary meaning of this card is go back and have a look at anything that you're on your soapbox about, or you're so determined, is it exactly right? Or are you deceiving yourself? And sometimes we can, yes, of course, deceive others because we don't want to hurt their feelings, or we feel that we're doing them a favour by not completely sharing the truth with them. We cherry pick what we think they need to hear or what will help them through that. And sometimes that's not always the best answer either. Sometimes people need to have complete and utter honesty, even if it is going to hurt them or make them upset. At least it gives them an opportunity to move back onto the rightful path that's right for them. So it's really important that we make sure that we understand when we're working with tarot, and I've been working with tarot most of my life, that we are completely honest. Now, many, many years ago, I got the wonderful opportunity to work with a publisher here in Australia called Hinkler Books. And we brought out in 2005, which is nearly 20 years ago now, the set that I'm using today called the Simply Tarot set. And what we did was we recreated the most popular deck in the world, which is known as the Rider-Waite deck. And we took that concept and we changed it into photographs. They was purpose shot photographs with real live models, real live scenery, and a lot of the scenery was shot here in southeast Queensland, particularly here on the Gold Coast. And it was manoeuvred and photoshopped and everything like that to mirror image as much as possible, as humanly possible, the original teachings of the Rider-Waite deck and the drawings that were designed by Pamela Coleman Smith all those years ago for Arthur Edward Waite. And we tried to keep the magic alive, but bring it across in a more positive, up-to-date, up-to-the-minute sort of format, and also not to infringe the copyright that was there with the Rider-Waite deck that should always remain the property of Rider-Waite, because it was the original deck and it should stay in its original format. And it was when we were working on this process and we were trying to work out which way we were going to take it with the new concept, that I suggested that maybe we should put the basic meaning on the bottom of the card, because of all my years of teaching, the one thing that I found my students stumbled at was the fact that by the time they rifled through their paperwork and found the meaning of the card, they'd lost their train of thought, or they'd lost their intuition, they'd lost where they were at, and they'd have to go back and regroup, and it felt disjointed and it felt uncomfortable. And a lot of my students used to put little sticky notes on the bottom of their card, or little labels, and write, a couple of words there to sort of trigger their memory. And that's what gave me the idea that if we were fortunate enough to put the basic meaning on the bottom of the card, it was there if you got stuck. It was there if you were in the very early stages of your learning, that you had some basic few words that you could then start to build your story around. It was never meant to be the only meaning of a card. It was meant to be the basic ABCs that you could then build upon, put your own interpretation into, go with what your intuition is telling you. But if you drew a blank, at least you had some words that you could go back to and say, oh, yeah, okay, that triggers off a chain of events or an opportunity there to put a story together. And that's what the tarot is about, is building a story. That, yes, I use just one card for the week as a general thing for what the general population around the world is going to experience. But if I was doing it in a professional situation, obviously we'd use more than one card. And depending on where the cards fall and how we would sort of build that story together of the pictures of the cards. And there's never a right or a wrong way. And I hear a lot of people say, oh, no, but it can only be this or it can only be that. No, the tarot is very fluid. It goes with how you feel. And there's been many a time in a reading where I know the basic meanings of the cards and I know what the cards are forming the picture, but my intuition will kick in, and it will kick in with something that might be varied or different or add another dimension to it or sort of take me in another way. And that's the way that I go, because that's what your intuition or your psychic ability is about, is learning to trust in that and go with what you're given. Even though it may not make sense to you, it may make very, very definite sense to the person that you're performing the reading for. And after all, it's their reading. You're just the channel. You're just the messenger that's passing the messages on. And I think that's one of the most important things that we all have to remember when we're performing readings, is we don't have the right to edit the information. It is there for the customer. It's there for the other person, the person that's getting the reading. It's their information. We're just passing the messages on. One of the other questions that I was asked many, many times in my career of teaching was, why don't you teach a reversed meaning, Amanda? And I used to sort of say, well, look, it's like this. If I get all of you to line up there and stand on your head against that wall, and then I turn you upright again, do I change your personality? And they'd say, no, why would you think that? Well, then turning a tarot card upside down on its head and standing it upside down doesn't change the energy or the power of the card either. And they'd say, oh, yeah, of course. Well, then how come just about every book that you pick up teaches a reversed meaning? And my answer to that was, it was first brought in to stop infringing a copyright. It was to make the reading different, so that, it moved its way around those copyright laws, that by turning, having reversed meanings, you had a completely different a reading. So I never have, and I never will work with reversed meanings. The cards go whichever direction they want to go. It doesn't change the energy or the message that the card is trying to share with you. That is my opinion. If you have a different opinion and you like to work with reversed meanings, that's fine, because that's your journey. That's your way of interpreting the cards. It's your reading, and you have the power to read your cards or use your tools in whichever way that you see fit. And it's interesting because people say, oh, what's the most powerful? There is no one tool that's more powerful than something else. It's always, I used to teach people, and I still say this today, don't go and do a course in whatever it might be if you're not drawn to it. Don't go to tarot classes on a Tuesday night because it's a Tuesday night and that's the night you've got free, and you're drawn to numerology or astrology or palmistry or past lives or whatever. Find somebody that can teach you what you're drawn to. If we go with what's natural and not necessarily what's just on offer, then we find the path that's right for us. For me, it was always, I had a fascination from as a little girl with the tarot cards. I didn't know what they were called. I just knew that they had pictures on them, and they weren't pictures that were normal everyday living. And that and the stars, astrology, that really fascinated me. Both of those things were the things that really fascinated me the most. And I was very fortunate that I had an aunt that believed in this sort of thing, even though I came from a very religious background and nobody talked about their own psychic ability. But I've pieced together over the years that all my relatives were psychic in some form or another, but nobody wanted to talk about it. It was a taboo subject. And she introduced me to the ordinary playing cards and sort of showed me how to work with those and to listen to my instincts, that, you know, if I felt something, to not ignore it. And, you know, I was forever in trouble as a child telling my mother that we were getting visitors in the days before people had telephones very frequently. And she'd say, oh, don't be silly. And then, you know, I'd say to her, look, so-and-so's coming in 48 hours. You better start tidying up, Mum, because she wasn't the greatest housekeeper. And she'd get really quite frustrated and angry with me. Well, lo and behold, Auntie Mary or whoever I said would be arriving would arrive. And, you know, you'd think over the years she would have listened to me, but she always dismissed it, and that's okay. And that was probably the best thing that she did do, because maybe it didn't allow my psychic ability to get out of control. That maybe my ego might have got in the road and I might have thought I was, you know, so clever that I didn't have to go to school or something like that. So, you know, that might have been a possibility. I wasn't a big fan of school. They didn't teach me what I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn about tarot and astrology. They didn't teach you about history and mathematics. I mean, yet mathematics actually did become very important to me much later in my life, and I'm pleased they did teach me mathematics, because in astrology, in the days before computers, we used to have to hand calculate everything. And I was very fortunate then that I had done really well in mathematics, and I found that part of astrology easy, where I know over the years teaching many, many students astrology, and even with the advent of computers, I still took them back to the basics and taught them how to hand direct a chart and how to do the calculations, because to me it was an integral part of them learning and understanding how that they could work with astrology, that you have to know the basics. You have to know how you got it, how the computer spat it out for you. You have to know those things. So it's really, really interesting, because over the years, you know, so many people have got into astrology, and there's so many astrology programs out there on computers and different versions of things. But to me, you can't go past the basics of having a good astrologer interpret a chart for you with their knowledge and their wisdom. You know, I'm not putting down computerized astrology. There's a place for everything, but it's a difference between a homemade cake and a packet cake, a packet mixed cake. You can taste the difference. Well, you can see the difference, you can hear the difference, and you feel the difference when you have an astrologer doing a chart for you. So that takes me on to the astrology section of the show. And this week I want to say happy birthday to all the Aries. But first and foremost, I want to sort of take a little bit of time to say this is the beginning, or in the last week has been the beginning of the new astrology year. It's the astrology new year. So when the sun goes into Aries, it's the beginning of the astrological year. And when I first started this show 8 years ago, I mentioned it was the beginning of the astrology year. And here we are again 8 years later. It is the beginning of the astrology year. So happy birthday to all the Aries. So we have at the moment sitting in Aries. Now, when I'm going to talk about the Aries energy at the moment, this is going to go to Leo, Sagittarius, and the opposite sign of Libra. It will also wash across all the other remaining signs, but it won't be as intense as it will be for those first four signs. So we have Venus, the planet of love and affection, is sitting in Aries at the moment. So if any one of the signs is looking for love, you've got to get out and do something different. Get out into places where people are sort of got some energy, that sort of, you know, are doing things that are different, that are sort of leading the way, that are sort of saying, this is a little bit of a me first energy. I'm going to show you how it's done. You know, you want to get out into places where people are sort of, in a sense, more or less very individual. It's not the herd immunity or the group immunity. You know, it's not everybody going to a rock concert. It's, you know, sort of getting out and meeting people in sort of some very active sort of places. You know, this might be the time that you take up a new sport or you take up a new interest. That's what you need to be doing, is stepping out of your comfort zone a little bit and looking for places. If you're a female, looking for places where men frequent. No point in going to flower arranging classes with mostly women, as that's all you're going to meet is women. And if you're looking for a man, that's the wrong place to be looking, and vice versa. So, you know, adjust that to what you need. So we have Mercury, the planet of communication, is going retrograde or backwards at the moment. So this is the reason for the technical issues here at the network, is Mercury's playing his little tricks as he does. Mercury rules all forms of communication, whether it's your cell phone, your internet, your computer, conversations you have with people where you actually have a conversation, anything that you write. These days we don't send a lot of snail mail, but we do send parcels in the mail and things like that. You need to double check, triple check. If you're going to fly, if you're going to take a journey somewhere, make sure that you're leaving plenty of time, so that if there is some sort of delay at the destination, you know, that you're boarding a plane or getting on a bus or getting on a train, that you're there in plenty of time so that you can overcome anything. This is the time when luggage gets mixed up, tickets get cancelled or mislaid or things like that. So it's just allow yourself a little bit of extra time under the Mercury retrograde. We've still got about another 10 days to go of this. So expect that this is not the time to go in and ask the boss for a pay rise. One, they might be preoccupied, and two, they mightn't feel that you deserve it at this point because they're so busy trying to keep themselves focused on what they have and haven't done, and has this arrived and that arrived, that they're not really paying attention. So please leave your that on pause for the moment if you want a pay rise. And when I say something's conjunct or holding hands, it means they're literally very close together. They're within a few degrees of each other, and this is why the energy is so intense. So Mercury, so we've got Venus conjunct or holding hands Mercury. Mercury is conjunct or holding hands the Sun in Aries. Now, the Sun is where we find our ego, our drive. It's what we all know as our sun signs, or our astrology sign is the Sun, is where the Sun is at your birth. So happy birthday again to all the Aries. And I have lots of Aries friends and family and lots of clients that are Aries. And it's one of my favourite signs. And one of the first things I learnt many moons ago when I first got into astrology was me first. And did I tell you about me first? Because Aries is the first sign. And yes, they can seem very self-absorbed, but their role is to motivate us, is to get us up off the couch, is to get us going, and then they disappear. It's like, well, I've motivated you, I'm off onto the next adventure, I'm off doing the next thing. It's not their role to make sure that you complete the task. They've got you up off the couch, you do the rest. So the next part we're going to talk about is what's sitting in Pisces at the moment. And we've had a plethora of planets that have been sitting in Pisces now for a very, very long time. I'm pleased to say a lot of this is coming to a close over the next few months, and we're going to start to see that things will be a lot less intense. So when we're talking about Pisces, we're talking about Pisces, Cancer, Scorpio, and the opposite sign of Virgo, and also going across to the remaining other 8 signs. So we have Saturn, the planet of discipline, is sitting in Pisces at the moment, is conjunct or holding hands. Now, Saturn's role here is to bring structure, is to bring opportunities in a way that, you know, we sit down, we do some very careful planning. Not necessarily is it to limit things, it's to show us that we've got to make sure that we've dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's, and everything's well presented or well organised, so that then we can proceed forward. Now, Saturn here is conjunct or holding hands the North Node. Now, the North Node is not a planet. This is showing us the way forward. So again, it doesn't really matter what your star sign is. Saturn is trying to show you the structure and putting down some good foundations to enable us to move forward, to show us the way forward of the things that we need to continue to try and achieve and deliver for ourselves in this coming 12 months. Now, North Node is actually conjunct or holding hands Neptune. Now, Neptune is the ruling planet of Pisces, so Neptune feels incredibly comfortable here. Neptune here to me at the moment is bringing out a lot of creativity. It's sort of not necessarily softening everything, but he's sort of trying to show us that, you know, there can be some creative ways to get solutions. Not everything is black or white. Sometimes there's more shades of grey, and sometimes we've got to look for a solution which may not seem exactly ideal to what we want, but it's the best that we can come up with at the moment. Without sort of tipping the balance and tipping everything out of balance, we're trying to sort of look for an equilibrium here. And this is what Saturn's trying to do. Yes, I'm being hard-hitting on one hand. I'm giving you structure here, but I'm showing you the way forward. But I'm also showing it to you in a creative way that if you don't just look at the here and now and what's on offer here and now, you'll see the bigger picture. You'll see the longer-term plan. You'll see that this will play out over the years, and this will be to your benefit. It will be to your advantage. So that's a very, very good thing. So look at that in that way, that we're all being shown where we need to be sort of heading. And, for a lot of us, it's been a pretty tough time financially, and different changes that are going on around the world politically and everything like that. It hasn't been the easiest time. There's been a lot of weather events, and I know a lot of people have written it and sort of blamed it on Pisces. I think it's a number of things that are causing that. It's not just one area. But, it's showing us that the planet needs changing, that we all need to sort of start taking some responsibility for what's sort of happening. So Pluto's in Aquarius, going to be there for a very, very long time. Still, the jury's out on how Pluto in Aquarius is going to work over the next 20, 30 years. It certainly is shaking things up. Pluto is asking us to step out of our comfort zones, to sort of rattle the cage, look at things differently, maybe find different solutions. Pluto's role is slow, deliberate, definite, and it will be lasting sort of changes. And as I said, Pluto's going to be there for a very long time. So we're going to be talking about that for a long time, but particularly affecting Aquarians, the other air signs of Gemini and Libra, and the opposite sign of Leo. So just be aware of that. If you're under those 4 signs, that's who it's affecting the most. It's just washing over the rest of us, thank goodness. So we have the moon at the moment sitting in Aquarius. Now, the moon changes signs every 2.5 days. So the moon doesn't sit in a sign for very long. So with it being in Aquarius at the moment, a lot of people are going to feel as if they want to emotionally detach from things at the moment. It's like everything's too hard. Do I have to keep doing this? I just want things to sort of slow down. I just want things to sort of slow down, catch my breath. And that's what it's asking you to do, is slow down, catch your breath, and, things will look better in a couple of days. So we've got Jupiter in Gemini. Jupiter's been in Gemini for quite some time now, wrapping up there in the next few months. So Jupiter is actually affecting the air signs as well, and the opposite sign of Sagittarius. So it's giving us the opportunity to really sort of make changes in our lives now, that if we want to bring about changes in our life, now is the time to do so. We have Mars sitting in Cancer. Mars doesn't feel particularly comfortable there. Mars is the planet of action, so it feels quite uncomfortable in Cancer. So again, affecting the water signs, and the opposite sign of Capricorn. So if you've got to get some new things off the ground, maybe try and look at it through a more gentle approach. Don't be sort of that bombastic sort of going in there and trying to change everything at a moment's notice. Finally, we're wrapping up with Uranus. Uranus has been in Taurus now for quite some time, like the bolt of lightning, trying to create change, but particularly for the earth signs, which is Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn, and the opposite sign of Scorpio. So that's where we're going to leave the astrology. I hope you've enjoyed this show this week, even though we weren't able to take a couple of callers. But I want to leave you with a song this week that I think is probably the best version of this song I've ever heard, and I've listened to many, many versions of this song. It is a song that is universal, I think, that we can all take something out of it. But the very, very first time I heard this version of this song, which was many moons ago now, it sent tingles down my body. It was almost like a religious experience. I couldn't explain it. And I was at an expo and I put it on the turntable, while we were getting ready to open the doors. And the cleaning lady came out and said to me, "Can you play that again, please?" She had tears running down her face. She said, "I have never, ever, ever heard that song sung that way." She said, and it was a Sunday morning. She said, "Well, I don't need to go to church now." And that's why I've always associated it with a religious sort of experience. But it's "You'll Never Walk Alone" by John Farnham. And he wasn't the one that made the song famous. They sing it a lot in England when they go to the soccer matches. But if you get a chance, pop it on your device, look it up on YouTube or whatever. It is the most powerful, amazing rendition of this song. And I want to leave that with you this week on our 8-year show, because I want you to know that you will never walk alone. We are always here for you at the network, and we enjoy bringing our shows to you each and every week. And we hope that you continue to join in with us and enjoy what we all have to offer here at the network. So until next week, bye for now.